Hello and welcome to Music Ally Focus with me, Music Ally's editor Joe Sparrow, and this is another podcast in the series that digs into the burgeoning Web3 spaces, new concepts, ideas and conventions, and how they relate to the music business. Web3, as a reminder, is a bit of a sea change in how we use the internet, with a wave of new, often complex technologies related to the crypto, decentralized and NFT space, and it bundles in the metaverse and more as well, of course. Now, these shows are designed to break down one concept at a time in the Web3 space, with the help of people who've been there, done it, and sold the virtual merchandise already. So shortly we'll be joined by Max Shand, founder of the music NFT platform Serenade, who's going to talk about what a longer-term music NFT landscape will look like and what opportunities there are for artists, labels, rights holders, and live performers as well. Now, what is the Music Ally Focus podcast? Well, Music Ally provides an analysis-rich guide to the music business, and each of these focus episodes analyzes one meaningful music business story at a time. This podcast will be quick too. It should only take a quarter of the time that David Rush of Idaho is able to balance an object on his nose. David balanced what is described rather obliquely as, quote, an object, but from photos it looks like a pool cue, on his nose for 1 hour, 43 minutes and 25 seconds in 2020. Now, talking of keeping something up in the air for longer than you'd imagine possible, the NFT bubble has not popped as some people predicted, but it has deflated dramatically since its stonk-tastic peak in early 2021. NFTs, having been something that raised millions of dollars overnight, have now settled into something more affordable, practical, and dare we say it, mundane. So we wanted to chat to someone who's partnered with lots of music industry institutions and artists to find out more. So let's go over to our interview with Max Shand of music NFT platform Serenade. So Max, thanks for joining us. We're here to talk about NFTs and music. Now, speaking as the editor of Music Ally, if I never have to read another breathless press release about NFTs and music ever again, that would be fine. But we're here to talk about it in a more sort of perhaps realistic and thoughtful way. We've gone through an unprecedented hype cycle with NFTs from like the explosive get-rich-quick start about a year ago, wild amounts of money being connected with musicians who are selling visual NFTs. Then there was a sort of, I'll call it a huge bandwagon jumping moment where everybody realized that this was the new technology and maybe there was some money to be made, and hundreds of artists leapt aboard. And now we're finally sort of entering a calmer sort of stage of where we're starting to see actual useful implementations of NFT technology for artists who are perhaps not able to or not interested in selling gifts for millions of dollars. You know, they want to do something more in line with their artistry, for instance. So we're here to have a chat about this sort of more nuanced, thoughtful, long-term applications of this technology, and in a sort of understandable way. You know, you've got a background that combines music and technology and can talk about it like that. So we've asked Max to clarify, and via his company Serenade, he has partnered with various music industry entities like Hypnosis and the Brits to create accessible, fan-friendly NFTs. Thanks for joining us, Max. You initially launched Serenade as a means to help artists, I think, if I'm right in thinking, on the sort of fan clubby direct-to-fan side of things, which is, of course, direct-to-fan is a huge element in the music industry right now, particularly for DIY artists. So can you tell us how NFTs line up with that vision of direct-to-fan relationships and selling things?
Yeah, so from day one, I was motivated by the mission of helping artists derive new revenue streams by delivering full experiences to fans. We initially did this through a personalized musical performances model, but then through feedback we received from artists, such as, we as artists want to create one thing for many. We want those one things that sell to many to then have a life after the fact where they can still keep generating revenue for me, like a stream. We want full creative license, and we want to learn the identities of our super fans so we can avoid the kind of awful expensive algorithms of Facebook and Instagram. All of that feedback led me to discover NFTs as a way to solve the artist dilemma. And so when we talk about kind of fan clubs and the behaviors that fan clubs serve, from the kind of 50s and 60s of Elvis up to now. It's the same thing of intimate relationships between artists and fans, allowing people to peer behind the scenes. NFTs allow you to do that because as an artist, when you sell an NFT to a fan, you're forging this kind of immutable relationship. There's also visibility where an artist can see who has bought their NFTs. And so there's this whole level of acknowledgement that has never really appeared in the relationship before. And as a lifelong music fan, I'll have to say that 2 years ago, I acquired the full fan club materials of Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. And the thing that I loved about kind of peering through everything from just wonderful letters from Andy to his fans to just their Christmas cards was it's the everyday lovely things. It's the stuff that happens behind the scenes that fans want to see. And I think what NFTs do really well is they help justify a whole new world of content that hasn't had a commercial format before. And so lots of the applications of NFTs that we will see going forward will be things that just enhance this intimate relationship between artist and fans, but then also connect fans with other fans by fact of that shared relationship as well.
This idea of direct-to-fan it is something which has really blossomed in the last couple of years, in parallel to NFT technology in a sense, because artists are embracing direct-to-fan relationships and business models that don't involve NFTs. They can do it in many, many different ways, and those platforms have matured recently and allowed them to do it. So it's quite a sort of serendipitous moment for NFTs that, on one hand, artists are looking to do that, and there's also this new option like that you just described that feeds into that. A very common thing that artists say, or artist teams say to me, is that they're looking to own the data, own the relationship, and monetize that. And that is what you're just describing. NFTs allow you access to that data, but it also allows all these other intricate fan-on-fan relationships and all this kind of stuff. So what does NFT technology offer? Can you give any examples of perhaps that kind of specific behavior? You went out and probably, I'm guess, scoured eBay and bought.
I did. You are right.
Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark stuff. I'll be honest, I did the same thing with. Over many years, bought all of the Beastie Boys Grand Royal magazines, and so I feel your pain.
Yeah.
But what sort of behaviors could NFTs provide? Like what could that look like as fan behavior?
Yeah, so how wonderful would it be if I, as a fan, was recognized for being in the top 10 fans of my favorite artist, and then my favorite artist can then reward me for how involved I am in their fan club with something like an airdrop, which is a free contribution of an NFT to just a group of people, say that is the top 10, or if there's been a wonderful performance in Brighton and the artist wants to say thank you to those Brighton fans, you can deliver something direct to them because you've forged all of these ties where you know who your fans are. You can also kind of embrace fan-to-fan behaviors of fans communicating with each other, sharing content. That's the wonderful thing about NFTs. But to compare it again to the experience of a traditional fan club, a traditional fan club is a subscription model where I buy content on a monthly basis. The artist is expected to provide content on a monthly basis. That creates a huge burden for artists because they're expected to deliver something every month, and therefore they're treated as influencers, not artists always. And so that's quite exhausting. Then a fan is always expected to pay something every month and is caught in a cycle of consumption, irrespective of where their kind of appetite is at. What an NFT does is it gives that same commercial outcome to an artist where every fan-to-fan sale creates that recurring revenue back to the artist. And to a fan, you know that if you're buying an NFT, you're getting something which has life after the fact. It is your kind of entry point into that community, but you can pass it on in the future. And you might even make a return on that if you kind of have supported an artist who other people love as well. And so you're also incentivized to be a bigger advocate, to be a loud voice in that artist community, because as you vocalize your passion, then that should hypothetically improve the performance of that NFT in the future.
Burnout is something that artists are more vocally talking about, and that's one of the consequences of not just the pandemic, but also this shift in direct-to-fan. Is that it's great having a direct relationship with your fans, but if you're expected to be churning content out all the time, how do you have time to be an artist? And that's an interesting balance, which I guess we're in the process of sorting out. And like you say, maybe not the non-committal nature of, or non sort of regular committal nature of NFTs allows artists to still give the fans what they want.
Just to respond to that directly, lots of the artists that we speak to often say that they feel more like t-shirt manufacturers than musical artists, and that is exhausting when every time you want to release a new merch drop, you're expected to be the one to very aggressively push that to your audience. The great thing about NFTs is as your collections start to perform, you have more people who are behind those, behind the ownership of those products, and then become your salespeople. They're the ones that kind of push you, promote you, advocate on your behalf. Whereas if I buy a Depeche Mode t-shirt on eBay, no money ever goes back to Depeche Mode, and that transaction is over.
Well, let's talk about selling things then. The initial buzz around music and NFTs was mostly around, in the music industry, was mostly around music artists, often ones who'd had a prior interest in Web3 technologies and had a community around it, selling visual art in a rapidly expanding bubble for huge amounts of money. We all know the names of those artists, and they made huge headline transactions, and good for them, I guess. But do you think that's distracted people in the music industry from the true use of NFTs for musicians? The kind of things you just mentioned are long-term ecosystem stuff, not selling a GIF of a beautiful animation for $3 million.
Yeah, what I'm passionate about creating in the music industry is that same kind of those same behaviors around collecting that were in a much more physical world. So when you collected records and posters and cassettes and whatever it is, and that was your physical relationship to that artist, and it created a more colorful relationship beyond just a stream. And so what NFTs have the potential to do in the long run is help people establish their digital record collections, which tell different stories about an artist, which mean that you can be more heavily plunged into the kind of creative journey of an artist rather than just relying on what they put out on DSPs. And so that's where I think a lot of the long-term value in terms of the product suite will be. But I think a lot of the value for artists and fans is in those intimate relationships that will form through the technology when you know each other's identities, when you can communicate with each other, when your fandom can be assessed based on artist-friendly stats. That's the really exciting stuff going forward. I think all of the headline catching numbers were wonderful because what they were kind of lots of money going to some wonderful artists, but most people don't have loads of money. And most artists shouldn't want to make their businesses from selling things for loads of money. They should be thinking about how can I create opportunities for all of my fans to engage with my work. And that's why in the long term, there will be models like Serenade of affordable, accessible NFTs that don't ask you to be a technical expert and know everything about the blockchain, that don't expect you to pay more in gas fees than you expect to pay for your product in total, and that don't do it with any compromises to environmental sustainability. And those three kind of pillars have been some of the core focuses of Serenade over the past 2 years.
And just to hop in here, if you're finding this useful and you crave more of this kind of news and trusted analysis waiting for you in your inbox every morning, please head on over to musically.com/subscribe. If you're part of an indie label, you're an artist manager, you're an employee of a CMO or a publisher, you may well be eligible for one of our sponsored complimentary subscriptions too. So what more encouragement do you need? It's musically.com/subscribe. Okay, let's head back over to the interview with Max. My next question was going to be, what is a good music NFT? But I think you've sort of answered that in that it's a lot more new. It's a lot more multi-layered than that. You can navigate your own as a musician. You can navigate a path through, and it's whatever your community wants to sustain itself as a community. But at the moment, there's a separation between music consumption and NFTs and that fan community, right? So you go to you go to a DSP and you stream the music, and then you go over here and you support the artist, whether it's merchandise, physical merchandise, or NFTs or tickets or whatever. Do you see a conflation of that where NFT, some sort of NFT implementation for artists actually happens within the NFT? So you could, like you say, if Taylor Swift, whose fans I believe are very enthusiastic about being Taylor Swift fans, but could you?
I have heard that.
Yeah, I know, I read it on the internet somewhere, but could you see a future where like an artist could have like their top 10 fans on their DSP page, and then they're sort of celebrated in that community?
Yeah, I have no doubt that there will be a conflation of streaming and more products over time. I think Spotify's relationship to Shopify is a very clear signal to that effect. I think people are working on ways to engage with NFTs through streaming platforms, and I'm very excited about that. But I think there's a more kind of nuanced conflation beyond the actual bringing of the product together that's already happened, which is that as an artist, if you put out an NFT, you're creating a moment for yourself and you're triggering your fans to think more actively of you, and then they will dive into your streaming, they will dive into your catalog, and so you are able to overcome kind of any people forgetting about you or moving on to the next shiny thing, because through an NFT, you've created a moment. And that's one of the most exciting things about NFTs for musicians, is that your performance going forward is so reliant on your ability to create kind of torchlights on your catalog. And NFTs allow you to do that when chances are you're only going to produce an album every 2 years. So you need to have as many tools at your disposal to effectively excite fans in the meantime.
It sometimes feels hard to get a full handle on NFTs' full and true usefulness. We're under an avalanche of hype, and it's incentivized hype. You know, people who want to talk positively about NFTs I'm not talking about you here, Max, present company excluded, but in general, you know, they're incredibly enthusiastic about, they're bullish on NFT technology, but that's because they of course are involved in it some way, and so by enthusiastically proletizing for NFTs, they're increasing the value of ownership that they have in that space, right? That's the sort of complication of one of the complications of discussing NFTs and the hype around it is marketing led. The value is linked to some of these NFTs very directly to marketing. So any critical questioning from some people is shut down as FUD, you know, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and you're trying to sort of go against this revolutionary technology. If we can leave all that aside for a moment, we've talked about the positives. What are the negatives of working with NFTs, or potential negatives, whether that's on impact in the way that an artist works? You mentioned that some artists say they feel like t-shirt manufacturers. Is there maybe an equivalent of that for NFTs, or does it put pressure on an artist in a different way, or how could someone get it wrong and make things harder for themselves?
Yeah, so first I do want to deal with some of those negatives, because it's important to isolate the negatives and work out kind of how to shine light on all the positives. The negatives are that artists feel, the industry is averse to these hype-driven products, which apparently have no value beyond the hype surrounding them. Now, I feel like that is very much a set of behaviors contained to odd animations when there's no emotional attachment to the work. It's all speculative. It's just trading on a stock market with pictures. That said, when you are able to buy affordable merchandise from an artist that now has the added value of being in a new format, which is more creatively liberating or free, that is giving you something that has a link to a liquid market, such that, you know, if you're spending kind of $100 on that limited edition t-shirt at a show, now you've actually got a way to dispose of it quickly and effectively without having to go through the hassle of photographing it and posting it on eBay. And you have the ability to show it off in a place that you increasingly are, which is online, which is on social media, which is really wherever you take your phone or laptop. That's really powerful, and that's not particularly outrageous. It's not out there in terms of a use case. It's just building a record collection online. And so in terms of how artists feel about producing NFTs, the wonderful thing about having built a few different direct-to-fan products over the last few years is that I have I can tell you that in the past, I have worked with artists on selling goods that they didn't really want to sell because they weren't as creatively exciting as NFTs are. Artists love producing NFTs, not because they're all kind of closeted crypto fans, but because they love the thought of, after decades of thinking about how much they can price their deluxe box set at, they now can get creative with all the different dimensions of a product. Time, length, sound, visuals, quantity of reach, what it means if you're going to do things kind of one after another, have a whole rollout plan over a year, over several years, over just a few weeks. There are all of these fun things to play with. And I think that excites artists, but then that is also the challenge, because it is far more green fields and open than products generally are in the music industry. And so it takes a lot of consideration, and excitement can often get the better of some people, and they can throw too much on a plate, and then fans don't always understand it. And so it's very important that you contain your excitement, direct it towards some simple offerings that fans will understand, because it's new for fans, and you need to take them on that journey with you. So I guess that's the positive of NFTs, with the negative of, I guess, how you navigate through this early stage of the business. And then I will say that a negative still for artists on their journey is that whilst artists really believe in NFTs and the technology underlying it, which is so artist friendly, you as an artist can sometimes be brought in with under the same banner as some of those scary, hype-driven, speculative, un-environmentally friendly projects, which is so foreign to those artists, so against the grain of their brand, that sometimes they get a bit of slack from fans in a way which is really unsavory and unpleasant. And so artists need to be very clear with their fans what their objectives are, and be a part of that educational process, because this is technology which has the ability to transform the lives of artists by creating a scalable alternative to like a t-shirt manufacturer. But it's certainly early days, and artists need to be prepared to take their fans on a ride, to take their fans on a journey, which ultimately gives them a lot more value as fans, and has the ability to unlock more creativity for the artist in the long run.
Are there, I mean, this is quite a broad question, but are there some artists who NFTs just don't work for? Do you ever speak to artists and say, look, I think looking at your fan base, they're probably not interested?
So I think to answer that question, you have to think about what is the objective of putting out an NFT. So lots of the headlines suggest that the sole objective is making a quick buck, and that's not the case, because lots of artists are using NFTs as a new format for creativity. And so there are some artists that do not have the potential to generate millions of dollars from an NFT drop. Hats off to kind of anyone who proves me wrong, but sometimes there might be a audience age or demographic which suggests or an artist brand that is somewhat inconsistent with an NFT drop. But then there's the other clear objective, which is promoting your creativity, which is having a new format for producing art, which is engaging fans in that art. And so even for artists who might not be Web3 native, generally electronic artists, they have the ability to broaden their creative palette through NFTs to reach fans in a new way. and that works. So I wouldn't say that there's anyone omitted from this journey. It's just what you hope to achieve with it. I would say that generally I get asked the question of what should I put out as an NFT? What is a good NFT product? And the answer to that is one which isn't particularly clear and therefore not always welcome, which is that it's just things that are authentic and genuine to you as an artist. And so if you put out something which naturally links to what you usually release, what your values are, how you address your fans, then fans will receive it well, and it will start your entry point into this new world.
And one more question about the fan perspective. You've worked with lots of artists now at Serenade and prior to Serenade. When you talk to artists, you mentioned this, how important to them is the their environmental concerns? Because, like you said, we've seen it online. Artists being brigaded and shut down on Twitter because they're selling NFTs as part of their ticketing or something like that, and the response is extreme. Either extremely positive or very negative, and often those concerns are from the fans. It seems to be around environmental concerns. Now, all merchandise that's produced has an environmental footprint that can, and let's be honest about that. But of course, anything that is blockchainified has a directly addressable environmental footprint. Right? We can measure the carbon footprint exactly. So how often do you hear those concerns when you talk to artists?
Every artist conversation, at some point, the environmental cost is addressed. And that's why when we can say that you would have to produce 197,000 Serenade NFTs to equal the carbon footprint of a single 12-inch vinyl, we make a lot of friends. Artists are obviously extremely mindful of what their audiences want. They built their careers around their audiences. They are mindful that their fans care about the environment. Most of the artists that we work with are deeply passionate about their environmental footprint, given they're the ones who have to go on tours that have a huge carbon footprint. They're the ones that have to produce vinyl to make a living, t-shirts to make a living. And these are the things that have the greatest environmental cost today. And so artists want to do whatever they can to reduce their footprint. And that's why working with Serenade on environmentally sustainable NFTs, they see as a wonderful alternative to both other forms of NFTs, but then also physical merchandise, because they can actually influence a improvement of their kind of net carbon footprint with a gradual shift from physical to digital.
Finally, then, we're in this period of shift where, like you said, the technology is new, the use cases are fuzzy, and artists perhaps don't have precedent. Like you said, that's the classic awkward answer. Well, you have to just do whatever's authentic to you, and you know your fans, and sometimes they don't know. They don't know how that would fit with NFTs. So if you sort of look forward a little bit, a couple of years, 5 years, what does a music industry, from a fan's perspective or an artist's perspective, look like? What does that industry look like if it has successfully incorporated NFTs? What's the day-to-day experience of a fan and an artist when NFTs are sort of saturated?
I think a fan has the ability to have a more vivid, wonderful is a very kind of empty word, a colorful relationship to an artist, which is split across more platforms of consumption, but held in a central location like a wallet, where you can listen to music, you can engage with an artist, you can speak to other fans, you have the ability to get really exciting opportunities to meet artists and feel a closer connection to them. I think all of these technologies, as we spoke about earlier, will converge, and there will be a compilation that will give additional value to each individual product. That's really how I see it. I see a real reemergence of small communities of support. I think it's perfect that alongside trends towards independence, you've got a tool that allows for more financial independence alongside creative independence. And I think that is only on an accelerating trajectory.
All right. Max Shand from Serenade, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Huge thanks again to Max Shand of Serenade, and we'll put some links beneath this podcast so you can go and check out some of the work he's been doing and some of the blog posts that they've been publishing about the future of the NFT music space. And if you found that useful, please share this podcast on with someone who you think will also get something out of it. And if you want to get in touch with me, my email address is joe@musically.com. It's always great to hear from you. We also have a free weekly email called The Knowledge, which rounds up a soup song of the best analysis, news, marketing insight and skills from Music Ally. So sign up and instantly you'll be a better person and more attractive to anyone you desire to find you attractive. Links are in the description as always. So thank you for joining us here on Music Ally Focus. We'll be back soon with a new podcast next week, and we'll be running this Web3 series of podcasts over the next few months as well. So that's it from me, Joe Sparrow, Music Ally's editor. And until next time, farewell.